Hello friends, I'm Heather. Welcome back to Belle's Library. Hope everybody had an amazing reading month. I know for me it was a little hectic, but I was checking out my ratings and they are phenomenal for the month, so super excited about that. March overall was like crazy busy. It was insane. I had clinicals like 12, 13-hour days on 2 days of the week, and then I had a bunch of other schoolwork going on, and then my parents had a vow renewal for their 25th anniversary, and it was just like so much stuff going on. And so I'm very much enjoying being on spring break right now from school, and that's really a big reason why I got to almost catch up on my entire TBR for the month, because I have actually had a moment to slow down and read and just have a minute to myself. I finished 3 books in 2 days because I was just like, we gotta get this moving. So I think I have 5 more books to actually talk about. I did do a mid-month wrap-up which talked about 8 of the books that I read this month. I will put it up top and down below for you guys. And so I'm going to go ahead and go through the stats for the entire month of March, and then we'll talk about the last half of the month that I did for reading. And yeah, that's kind of how this is going to roll. So in total, for the month of March, I read 13 books, and that equated to 4,508 pages. Not too bad. If you guys have not watched my TBR game Belle's Bookland yet, it just went up a couple days ago, and I talked about what books from my TBR I did or didn't possibly get to, and if I had to take a punishment, and it's just a really fun TBR game, so I definitely would go and check it out. It will be up top and down below as well for you guys. Okay, so let's talk about the format of the books that I read this month. I read 6 audiobooks. 1 was an actual physical book. 2 of them were ebooks, and then, 4 of them were ebooks, and 2 of them I read in multiple ways. That's why my physical book count was a little bit low, because 2 more of those books I did read some physically and then also on audio, so kind of had both methods happening. If you watched March's Belle's Bookland TBR, then you know that it was extremely sci-fi and fantasy heavy. Like, that's almost the entire thing. So genre-wise, I ended up reading 4 sci-fi books and 7 fantasy, and then I squeezed in 1 romance and 1 horror book. 4 of those books were adult books and 9 more YA, so I did kind of lean more towards young adult this month. And this is where it gets really exciting, because the start of March was a little rough. I started with a 2-star book and then a 3-star book, and I was like, oh man, are we just not going to have a month? And then by the end of the month, we've had 6 5-star books, 4 4-star books, 1 3-star, 1 2-star, and a DNF. So, I mean, we definitely swung the other direction completely. I really think that a big part of that is because I started reading some sequels to series that I already know that I've really enjoyed so far and loved, and so I think that kind of swayed us towards those 5 stars a little bit more. So as far as LGBTQ plus wrap, I had a little bit of it this month, but not as much as I feel like I usually do. But I had 2 books in which the main character had some of that rep, and then 1 where it was present. And then I read 3 books that were from authors of color for the month. So I think my goal is to try to read 3 to 4 authors of color, and then I think like 2 from LGBTQ+. So I did hit that, but percentage-wise, I do want to read a little bit more, especially from authors of color. I know my goal is to hit 30%, so 3 out of 13 isn't quite there. So I'll have to definitely be working on that here in the coming April month. So that's going to conclude the stats portion of this video, and now I'm going to talk about the last 5 books that I read this month. So we'll go ahead and start with We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. So I actually really wanted to pick this book up after reading The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I really enjoyed that book, and if you haven't listened to it, I really recommend the audiobook. I really enjoyed it, and I actually listened to We've Always Lived in the Castle on audio as well, and I enjoy the narration of them, and I haven't tried to physically read any of these books, so I don't know, because they are more of a classic horror, if it would be harder to read them, but listening to them, I love. So I gave this one 4 stars versus 5 stars for The Haunting of Hill House. I definitely liked The Haunting of Hill House a little bit more, but it was still good. We Have Always Lived in the Castle. We're basically following these sisters, and one of them, you like start with her going into town, and everybody like doesn't really look at her, and they really just look down on this family, and they live in this big mansion house, and they all kind of try to stay there pretty much, and they stay away from everybody because of this big, what's the word that I'm thinking of? What is the word? Basically, like, there's a big rift between them and the rest of the town because of this big dramatic thing that happened. And so they just stay up in their house, and the one girl goes into town to get groceries like once a week or something like that. And so this long lost cousin or uncle or something ends up coming and visiting them, and basically is trying to like get to their money because they're rich. And it kind of ensues from there. I was actually really enjoying the build-up of this story. It was just the ending kind of just went too weird, and I was just like, I don't fully understand where we were trying to go with that, and I don't feel like it totally worked, and I was kind of bummed because I was like really enjoying it until like the last like 10%, and then I was just like, well, it was weird. But still a 4-star because I still really did enjoy it. I think that Shirley Jackson does a really good job of like building this kind of just weird, eerie atmosphere. Her horror novels, like, it's a classic horror, so they're not like super scary, in your face, like terrifying, but she does a good job of just like having like this underlying like just creepy, eerie like feeling. I don't know how to explain it exactly, but I really enjoyed it. It is a little more, you know, metaphorical in a lot of ways, and I don't know, it was good. I liked it. So that's my synopsis there for you guys. So this month I did read a few sequels, and one of them that I was planning on reading for my TBR game was Gemina, but I really wanted to go back and reread Illuminae. Illuminae was one of my favorite books of 2020, and I was just like, I really want to reread the first one and then go into the second one. So I ended up doing that. So I actually listened to it on audio though, because I know a lot of people have really recommended the audiobooks for these, and I read it physically because I really wanted to enjoy the mixed media format that happens in these books. Overall, I think the audiobook is done really well as well. So there are some pros and cons to each, I feel like. In the mixed media format, I feel like it's really an experience to go through and just read like the different memos and the different way they write things. Sometimes like it's more of like a picture or something that just works. There's interviews, and sometimes I feel like that stuff is kind of cooler to see on the paper, and it's almost like an experience as you're reading it. But at the same time, the audiobook was really cool because it was a full cast. They had a ton of really good like sound effects and different stuff going on, and I think that they did a really wonderful job of putting it together, and like it was a really well done audiobook. I'm not gonna lie about that. I think I prefer to physically read it more just because I really enjoy having the more tactile. I like to be able to see like the layouts of the ship. That's a good example. Like, how are you going to be able to show that in an audiobook? It's not exactly going to happen, but that's just my visual brain a little bit more. So I enjoyed that I was able to actually experience this book in both ways because I truly love this series so far. So this is still a 5-star for me. If you guys haven't heard about what Illuminae is about, we're basically following Katie, and her home planet is attacked, and she ends up escaping with her life onto these ships, and there was like a UTA vessel nearby. They like basically it's like a battle. It was like a battleship, and he was protecting this science vessel. And so they come and they try to save a bunch of the people that are on this planet. And Katie's one of them, and she's our main character we're following. And basically we're putting together, it's like after the fact, they've put together all these files and documents showing what actually happened and why they were attacked, and all this other crazy stuff that happens up in space in these spaceships that they're trying to get away, and they're still being like followed by the other people who did the attacking because I don't want anybody to know what's actually happening out here. So it's really thrilling and interesting, and I loved all the different elements that go into this, and the twists and the turns, and like I loved it. So while we're on the subject, we might as well just move into Gemina, which is the second book in the series, and I read this one this month. I did decide to read this one physically because I like that a little bit more than the audiobook, but I would absolutely love to go back and listen to the audiobook. Actually, I'm lying. I did both. I read most of this physically with my eyes, but I was trying to finish it on the last day of the month, and I was like, I need to finish this so that it's part of my TBR and I'm not taking a bunch of punishments this month. And so I actually downloaded the audiobook and I did both. I read it and I listened to audio when I couldn't sit and actually physically read it. One of the things in this one, our main character Hannah, so we're following a different space station this time, actually, not a ship, and different characters, but she keeps a diary, it's not like a written diary. She likes to draw pictures in her diary. So I feel like with the audiobook, you don't necessarily get to see those things. And so I do feel like in that way, again, reading it physically is a little bit better, but the audiobooks are still really wonderful, and I think you would, here, I think you can get just as much out of the audiobook. I just really like the visual aspects of this book as well. So this one we're following Hannah and Nick, and basically the company that is involved in all of this is trying to cover up things still, and their spaceships gets kind of pulled into everything. And I really liked this one as well. So this one was 5 stars, just like Illuminae. These stories are just wonderful, and I'm really excited to see where this is going. I'm pretty sure that the main characters in the first book and then in this book kind of coincide and come together in the last book. So I'm excited to get to Obsidio soon. I'm not going to tell too much more about this book because I don't want to end up spoiling anything for Illuminae, but if you haven't started this series and you like sci-fi, or even if you're like new to getting into it, so I feel like it's a really good beginning to get into sci-fi, and I feel like mixed media is just really fun to get into as well, makes it a little easier. There's also really fun like sarcastic humor and everything going through these. Oh, stupid train. Living near a train is such a pain in the butt. So anyways, thoroughly enjoy, and I'm excited to be getting this series on my shelf here. If you guys don't know and you're new to my channel, I'm trying to, basically the top part of my bookshelf is all books that I've read, and then the bottom is my TBR books. And so I'm trying to extend my top bookshelf down and really work through the books on my shelf. And another part of that is that my series are actually separated until I've read them. So I've got now my Illuminae and Gemina together, which I'm excited about. So I figured I would stand today during today's video so you can see some of my sequels be able to kind of move into my shelf, and we can see how that's progressing. Okay, bye train. Time to get to the next book, which was The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. And this book was phenomenal. This one was 5 stars as well. Pretty much almost this entire part of the video here is a bunch of 5-star books. So The City of Brass. The writing in here is gorgeous. I feel like I can visually imagine and see this city so well, and like the people, she just explains, she explains the imagery just beautifully. I adore the atmosphere that she really builds in this book. I think like this book is pretty long. It's 530 pages. So I will say that there is a lot of buildup. Like if you are not a fantasy reader that likes to have a lot of world building in the beginning, and you're really like kind of learning a lot about different tribes and different politics, and you like there's a lot of world building. There's magic in here that you have to learn about. You have to learn about the Jinn and the Deva, and you have to learn about how they fit into the human worlds, and then there's Ifrits, and there's a lot going on, and it does take a while to build it up in this book. But then you get to that last 200 pages where things start to really come together, and man, things just start going. And you're just like, yes, this is why we had this build up. This is why we had to learn all these things. Oh my goodness, this is wonderful. Our characters are just, they're tricky and they're smart and they're conniving, and you don't know who you actually want to trust. You want to trust certain people, and then you're like, but do I actually want to? But then you go back to it and you're like, yes, no, I do. And oh man, I feel like it was kind of a roller coaster. Each of the characters in here is very unique. They have their own personality. They have their own goals and their own beliefs that they are, you know, they believe in and that they're trying to bring into the world. Yeah, so I thoroughly enjoyed all of that. And I noticed something at the end of this one too. In a kind of series like this, I feel like the ends, you have to kind of make them a certain way, at least for me. I really enjoy when I get some answers. I can't be left hanging on everything to where I have no answers. That irritates me so bad. So I have to have some kind of amount of answers. There has to be a little bit of something happening for me to make me feel a little bit better. But then I also like to have that little like twist intrigue at the end, and some of those things I'm just like, wait, what? Now I need to get to the next one, and I'm like so excited to get to the next one, and I just, you know, it keeps me hanging on. So it has to have a little bit of both of those things, and this book did that beautifully, I feel like. So if you haven't heard about what City of Brass is about, so we are following Nari, and she lives in Cairo, and she's an orphan, and she's kind of had to figure out how to survive in maybe not such legal ways. And one day she's doing this ceremony, and she's speaking in this language that she assumes is from her parents. She doesn't know exactly where it's come from, and she's never heard anybody speak it. And she accidentally conjures up a jinn, and then she gets taken to the City of Brass, which is this big city. It's called Davabad, and it's where all the jinn live, and they have several different tribes. Is not the right word. Several different, I guess it is tribes. It does say tribes. Okay, so you got 6 different jinn tribes there. So you're learning about all these different jinn tribes, and she finds out that she is, you know, a part of these jinn. And then we also are following Ali, who is one of the king's sons, his second son. So he's the prince, and he doesn't fully believe in everything that the king does, and he's still trying to figure that out, but he's still very young compared to how old the jinn get to be. So he's like 18 or 20. I think he's like 20. But the jinn live for like a few hundred years. OMG, I think that's another train. What is happening right now? We're going to try and talk over it for a minute here, just because I'm on a roll. So we're basically following these 2 different storylines, and each of them is kind of on a different side of the issue, but at the same time they're not, and they're kind of intersecting, and I don't know how to explain it exactly because you have to read it, but I will say that I highly recommend reading this one physically. I actually did read this on audiobook back in December, and I got really lost in it. You've got these 6 different tribes, and then when you're trying to figure it out in an audiobook, which one they're talking about and who they're talking about, and the names, at least for me, like they're not American names, so I was trying to like follow along with it and figure it out. It was very hard to follow all the different names and all the different tribes, and I was getting very confused. So I think I ended up like just throwing it at like 2.5 times speed, and for like the last half of the book, and I was just like, I'm not understanding any of this anyways, so maybe I'll just listen to it really fast, and then I'll come back and physically read it, and maybe some of it will kind of have sank in, and we'll just go from there. And yeah, I got so much more from this reading it it physically, I understood so much more. I loved the characters and the atmosphere and everything so much more. The storyline, like everything. There were things I was just like reading and I was like, I don't remember this at all. So I'm really thankful for that. Also in the physical book, that she does put a few things at the end here, like what's the word? Like a little glossary of some of the terms that she uses, and some of the different, like, yeah, it's mainly like a little glossary, but I think that's very helpful. There's also a map, I'm pretty sure, at the beginning. I don't know that I referenced it too often, though. I usually reference my maps like once or twice during the book, which I think I did in this one as well. But just helpful things that I feel like made the story come together so much better. So for me, I definitely enjoyed the physical book, and I know when I'm picking up the next couple books in this series that I'm going to be reading them physically. Okay, the very last book that I'm going to be talking to you guys about is Legendary. This book is the second book in the Caraval series. There's 3 total, and I'm super excited to finish this one up very soon. But Legendary, so Caraval, basically we are following Scarlet, and she has always dreamed about going to Caraval, which is this like audience participation game carnival, and this year she gets to go, and her sister's going with her, Tella, and so Scarlet plays the game, and this game is so interactive and cool. There's like this crazy magic going on, and you're questioning the entire time, like what's real, what's not real, what is actually happening, and it's fantastic. So in Legendary, we are following Tella and her point of view, and she's playing the game. And we're finding a little bit more out about Legend, who is the person who runs this game, and he's the one with all the magic that kind of he puts into the game. So yeah, it says Legend has chosen you to play a game that may change your destiny. Your journey will begin at the fated ball. The game officially begins at midnight on the 30th day of the growing season and ends at dawn on Elentine's Day. So we definitely get a little bit more into learning about Legend, and again, you're just questioning what's real, what's not real, what's actually happening. I really enjoy the atmosphere of this one as well. It's very magical, and the writing's just really lyrical, and I really enjoy that piece of it. Tella and Scarlet, we don't see a ton of Scarlet in this one. We're mainly focused around Tella and learning more about her, but she is definitely the more adventurous of the 2 sisters. Scarlet is a little bit more reserved, and she really wants to protect her sister and do things the right way, and Tella's like, no, I want to kiss all the boys, I want to go on adventures, I want to have fun, and she believes a little bit more in some of the macabre, like the fates and fortune telling and stuff like that. So that is very interesting and fun. One thing that I don't know if everybody enjoys this, but I just find it really fun. The author talks a lot about like the fun things that they are wearing, and she always makes it so interesting. So I enjoyed that in this one as well, and I enjoyed it quite a bit in Caraval. Scarlet has this really cool dress that like changes with her moods, and then Tella's got some other fun stuff that she gets to wear, and it's a fun element that I enjoy from the books. Not that it's like a super crazy big part of it, but I definitely enjoy that quite a bit. So very intrigued and excited to see where the last book's going to lead us. I'm thinking maybe we're following both the sisters. I'm not really sure how that's working out in the end. We'll have to find out soon. So this is another one that I get to add in here as can go next to Caraval and make my little series continue. So these top 2 shelves are completely full of books that I've read, including the stack that's in front here is books that I've read. And then I've got 3 books down below here, or 3 shelves on the bottom there that are full of TBR books, and a small stack like this as well. So I still have more TBR books than I do read books, but I'm working on it. I know at the beginning of the year I didn't even have the second shelf full. So to have the second shelf full plus these books, I'm doing better. I'm doing better. So anyways, that is the rest of my March wrap up. And if you guys want to hear more about the other books that I read, again, you can always go and check that out. But I hope you guys will subscribe and stick around, join the family. Let me know what you guys read this month. What was one of your favorite books or your least favorite books? I would absolutely love to hear. If you guys have read any of these, let me know. And down below, if you have stuck around to this point, go ahead and throw a carrot emoji down there for me. And I will talk to you guys really soon. Have a good day, guys. Bye.